The Extremely Unlikely Adventures of Mr. Parsnip and His Uncooperative Toaster, Part 1. It all began on a Tuesday morning, which is statistically the least heroic day of the week. Mondays are at least dramatic because they ruin weekends. Fridays are exciting because they smell faintly of pizza and poor life choices. But Tuesdays are like a gray sock that lost its pair. It exists, but nobody's excited about it. On this particular Tuesday, Mr. Archibald Parsnip woke up to discover that his toaster had declared war, not in the traditional way, mind you. There were no cannons, no cavalry charges, no diplomats frantically scribbling treaties. No, this was subtler. When Mr. Parsnip attempted to insert a slice of bread, the toaster spat it back out with such force that the slice flew across the kitchen, ricocheted off the cat named Admiral Fluffington, and lodged itself dramatically in a jar of marmalade. "Traitor," Mr. Parsnip muttered to the toaster, narrowing his eyes. "I see how it is." The toaster hummed, as if in agreement, then refused to light up at all. It just sat there smug, its chrome exterior reflecting Parsnip's increasingly annoyed face. This would not do. Mr. Parsnip was, after all, a man of routine. He woke up every morning at 7:03 a.m., brushed his teeth for exactly 142 seconds. He had a stopwatch for this, combed his remaining hair into what could only be described as a comb-over attempting an ambitious trapeze act, and toasted precisely 2 slices of bread. Not 1, not 3, not an English muffin, 2 slices of bread. But today, the sacred ritual had been interrupted. Admiral Fluffington yawned, clearly unbothered by this descent into domestic chaos, and proceeded to lick the marmalade off the bread slice as if to say, "You worry too much, human. All bread belongs to cats anyway." Mr. Parsnip sighed. He was not a man who liked change. The last time something unexpected had happened, it was when the postman accidentally delivered him a box of rubber chickens instead of his subscription to Practical Accountancy Monthly. He'd kept the chickens, of course. They were excellent company, but he still hadn't quite forgiven the postman. The shop of unhelpful appliances, realizing that breakfast without toast was as unthinkable as tea without judgmental glares. Mr. Parsnip decided to purchase a new toaster. He marched into town, still in his slippers, and entered the first shop he saw, Mervin's House of Appliances and Occasional Cheese. Mervin, the proprietor, was a man of indeterminate age with eyebrows so large they could have had their own postal codes. He greeted Mr. Parsnip with the enthusiasm of someone who had just swallowed a lemon whole. "I need a toaster," said Mr. Parsnip. "Of course you do," Mervin replied. "Everyone needs a toaster, even people who claim they don't secretly want one. Last week I sold one to a monk who lives entirely on spiritual enlightenment. He said he didn't want it. He bought 2. "Splendid," said Parsnip. "I'll take your most reliable model." Mervin leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Reliable, eh? You won't find that here. What I do have, however, is exciting." "I don't want exciting, I want toast." "Exciting toast," Mervin countered. He gestured to a gleaming device at the back of the shop. It had more buttons than a spaceship and was labeled Toastron 5000. "Warning may summon minor demons." Parsnip frowned. "That seems excessive." "Nonsense," said Mervin. "It makes 6 kinds of toast, lightly singed, golden, crispy, charred, sacrificial, and oops all smoke." Mr. Parsnip should have walked away. He should have chosen the boring 2-slot toaster sitting in the corner like a reliable old friend. But he didn't, because deep inside his heart, under the layers of routine and sensible socks, Archibald Parsnip secretly craved adventure. "I'll take it," he declared. Admiral Fluffington, who had followed him into the shop, meowed disapprovingly. The toastron awakens. The first slice went in smoothly enough. Mr. Parsnip pressed a button that looked promising, though it was labeled only with an ominous skull. The toaster whirred. It hissed. It emitted a sound disturbingly similar to a goat sneezing. And then, poof, a small puff of smoke rose from the slots. When it cleared, standing on the counter was a tiny, disgruntled imp wearing an apron that read, "Kiss the cook." "Good morning," the imp said cheerfully. "Who ordered the infernal sourdough?" Mr. Parsnip blinked. I just wanted toast." The imp sighed. "They always say that. Nobody ever wants me. I spend centuries perfecting my craft, bagels, rye, ciabatta, and what do I get? I just wanted toast." He snapped his fingers and the slice popped out, perfectly browned. To Parsnip's horror, the imp bowed and vanished in another puff of smoke. Admiral Fluffington stared at the toast with the grim suspicion of someone who had seen far too many supernatural kitchen mishaps already. Trouble at the library the next day, things escalated. Mr. Parsnip, still rattled, decided to seek answers. He went to the library, because that's where all proper Englishmen go when they have existential crises involving kitchen appliances. The librarian, Miss Prudence Pringle, was a terrifying woman who could silence a screaming baby with a single glare. She listened to his tale. then led him to a dusty section labeled Occult Kitchenware and Miscellaneous Pudding Lore. "You'll want this," she said, slamming a massive book onto the table. The title read, The Necrotostican, A History of Cursed Bread-Making Devices. Parsnip hesitated. "Surely you're not suggesting," but she was already shushing him so violently that the air pressure in the room dropped by several atmospheres. Flipping through the book, Parsnip discovered horrifying accounts of toasters that could open portals, kettles that foretold doom through steam patterns, and one particularly disturbing spatula that had started a cult in Devon. The Toastron 5000, it seemed, was the latest in a long line of appliances designed by the enigmatic inventor Professor Bartholomew Crumblewhite, a man known for his motto, "If it doesn't explode, it's not breakfast." The quest, sort of, by now, Mr. Parsnip realized he had no choice. He could not simply throw the toaster away. Cursed objects had a tendency to return, usually via parcel post marked "Return to Sender." The only solution was to track down Professor Crumblewhite and demand an explanation. This was, of course, absurd. Mr. Parsnip was not an adventurer. His idea of danger was drinking tea that was 1 degree too hot. But fate has a cruel sense of humor, and so it was that Archibald Parsnip, accompanied by Admiral Fluffington, set off to find the world's most irresponsible inventor. He left his flat armed with a backpack containing 3 pairs of socks, a packet of ginger biscuits, a magnifying glass he didn't know how to use, and, of course, the Toastron 5000, which hummed ominously. On the way out, he passed Mrs. Tittlewhip, his neighbor, who was watering her plants with military precision. "Going somewhere, Mr. Parsnip?" she asked suspiciously. "Yes, an adventure," she gasped. "On a Tuesday? How dreadful. Don't forget your scarf." The train of mild peril Parsnip's journey began on the 8:17 train to Upper Grumblethorpe. It was the sort of train that always smelled faintly of boiled cabbage, regardless of season. He settled into his seat, Admiral Fluffington curling on his lap, when he noticed something odd. Everyone else on the train was carrying a toaster. The man across from him had a 4-slot model shaped like a dragon. The elderly lady beside him had a travel-sized toaster she was knitting a cozy for. Even the ticket inspector wore a bandolier of miniature toasters like some kind of carb-fueled commando. Said Parsnip, "is this normal?" The lady smiled sweetly. "Oh yes, dear, we're all going to the same place, you know, the Great Toast-Off." "The what?" "The annual competition to determine the supreme master of toast making. Winner gets a golden baguette and control over the Toastery Council. Very prestigious." Parsnip blinked. "I just wanted breakfast." The lady patted his hand. "Don't we all, dear, don't we all?" An ominous arrival, the train screeched to a halt at a station that looked as if it had been designed by someone who thought ominous was a style of architecture. Gargoyles leered from the roof. The ticket booth had cobwebs thicker than the employee's mustache, and in the distance, Parsnip could see the looming silhouette of a mansion shaped suspiciously like a loaf of bread. "That's the place," whispered the old lady, pointing with a shaky finger. "Crumblewhite Manor," Parsnip gulped. Admiral Fluffington flicked his tail, unimpressed. The Toastron 5000 gave a low growl as though eager to return to its birthplace, and so Mr. Archibald Parsnip, accountant, reluctant adventurer, and enemy of malfunctioning breakfast equipment, took his first nervous steps toward the mansion, completely unaware that this was only the beginning of the most ridiculous ordeal of his life. Part 2, the Toast-Off Catastrophe. The first thing Mr. Archibald Parsnip noticed about Crumblewhite Manor was that it smelled faintly of burnt crumpets. The second thing he noticed was that every window had curtains shaped like slices of bread. And the third thing, perhaps the most disturbing, was the enormous banner over the gate that read, "Welcome to the Great Toast-Off. Bring your own butter." Parsnip swallowed hard. He had not brought butter. He hadn't even brought a knife. All he had was Admiral Fluffington, a bag of ginger biscuits, and the Toastron 5000, which pulsed ominously as if aware it was approaching its ancestral lair. "This," Parsnip whispered, "is a terrible idea." Admiral Fluffington yawned in agreement, then leapt gracefully from his arms and strutted toward the gate. Cats, after all, are never intimidated by architecture, even when it looks like an enormous baked good. The gathering of the Toastmasters inside the manor's grand hall, hundreds of competitors milled about. Long tables were covered in loaves, baguettes, bagels, croissants, and an unsettling number of gluten-free substitutes. The air was thick with the aroma of yeast, competition, and mild desperation. At the far end stood a dais, upon which perched the Toastery Council, 7 robed figures, each holding a ceremonial spatula. Their leader, a tall man with bread crumbs in his beard, raised his hands for silence. "Welcome, bakers, roasters, and reckless fiddlers with dials," he proclaimed. "Tonight we decide who shall rule the realm of breakfast." Tonight we crown the supreme toaster. The crowd erupted in cheers, crumbs flying like confetti. Parsnip tugged nervously at his comb-over. He had never entered a competition before, unless one counted the annual neighborhood hedge-trimming contest, which he had lost spectacularly after trimming his hedge into the shape of a confused platypus. And yet here he was, surrounded by professional toastmasters armed with appliances that looked more dangerous than medieval siege engines. A man beside him polished a toaster shaped like a dragon's head. Another contestant caressed a sleek chrome machine that purred like a kitten. A woman with fireproof gloves carried a flamethrower labeled experimental bread browning device. Parsnip sighed. I just wanted breakfast. The professor appears before the competition began. A hush fell over the hall. From a side door shuffled an elderly man in a flour-dusted lab coat. His spectacles were cracked, his hair looked like he'd styled it with static electricity, and his pockets jingled ominously with loose screws. This was unmistakably Professor Bartholomew Crumblewhite, inventor of the Toastron 5000. Greetings, disciples of crust and crumb, he announced. I see you've all gathered to burn bread in increasingly unsafe ways. Excellent. I do love tradition. The crowd applauded wildly. Crumblewhite bowed, scattering breadcrumbs in every direction. Parsnip, summoning courage from the bottom of his teacup soul, stepped forward. Professor Crumblewhite. Yes, person with a disproportionately anxious forehead. This toaster. Parsnip held up the Toastron 5000, which growled like an annoyed badger. It's been spitting imps into my kitchen. I demand an explanation. Crumblewhite beamed. Ah yes, one of my better models. The imps are complimentary. They make excellent scones if you treat them kindly. I don't want imps, I want toast. The professor looked genuinely baffled. But why settle for mere toast when you could unleash the arcane mysteries of bread browning sorcery? Because, Parsnip said firmly, I'm an accountant, and accountants like things predictable. 2 slices, golden brown, no surprises. Certainly no demons, the hall gasped. To dismiss demons was unthinkable. One competitor fainted into a tray of baguettes. Round 1, the speed toast. A gong sounded. The council announced the first challenge, speed toast. Competitors had exactly 60 seconds to produce as many slices of edible toast as possible. Toasters roared to life. Flames leapt. Sparks flew. A man in the corner accidentally launched a sourdough like a discus. Someone else's bread combusted entirely, leaving behind a smoking crater. Parsnip hesitated. He placed 2 slices into the Toastron 5000. The machine word hissed and pop. Produced toast so perfect it could have been painted by angels with buttered brushes. The crowd gasped. Judges scribbled furiously. Admiral Fluffington batted at the toast, then deemed it acceptable and sat down like a royal inspector satisfied with his subjects. Parsnip stared at the slices. Oh, that wasn't so bad. But then the toaster shuddered, glowing ominously, and spat out a 3rd slice, engraved with a mysterious rune. Smoke curled upward, forming the words, "Feed me more." Parsnip swallowed. This could only end badly. Round 2, artistic toast. The second challenge required competitors to create an artistic masterpiece using only bread and heat. One man sculpted the Mona Lisa in rye. A woman toasted an elaborate depiction of a unicorn fighting a dragon. Another entrant produced a loaf that resembled the Tower of London, complete with tiny bread prisoners. Parsnip had no idea what to do. He was not artistic. The last time he'd tried drawing, his stick figure had been mistaken for an abstract representation of existential despair. Nervously, he pressed the toaster's most mysterious button, a dial labeled Beyond. The toastron rattled violently, then erupted with light. When the smoke cleared, sitting on the table was a sculpture of Admiral Fluffington, life-sized, perfectly browned, and somehow purring. The real Admiral Fluffington stared at it, unimpressed, but the judges were entranced. Magnificent, cried one. Revolutionary, gasped another. It looks edible and smug, declared a third. Parsnip blushed. I didn't mean too late. He had scored the highest points of the round. His fellow competitors eyed him with bread-fueled envy. Round 3, the final toast at last, the council announced the ultimate challenge, the supreme slice. Each competitor must produce one piece of toast so extraordinary it could alter destiny itself. The hall dimmed, a hush fell. Somewhere, a dramatic kettle whistled. Parsnip's hands trembled. He inserted a single slice into the Toastron 5000. The machine vibrated, smoke rising, sparks flying. Then, with a deafening ding, it spat out a slice engraved with words of blazing fire. Bow before the Toastmaster. The crowd fell silent. Even the dragon-shaped toaster hissed nervously. Crumblewhite cackled like a man who just replaced his brain with a waffle iron. Parsnip gaped. I don't want to be the Toastmaster. I just want breakfast. But the council fell to their knees. All hail Archibald Parsnip, supreme master of toast. Trumpets blared. Baguettes were thrown like bouquets. Someone in the back fainted into a pile of croissants. Admiral Fluffington leapt onto the dais, clearly assuming his rightful position as co-ruler. Parsnip flailed. No, 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 this is a misunderstanding. The rebellion of appliances, unfortunately, destiny has no patience for misunderstandings. The Toastron 5000 began to glow brighter, louder, hotter. Its slots widened like a mouth ready to swallow the world. Other appliances in the hall trembled, then rose from the tables. Kettles whistled menacingly. Mixers spun like whirling dervishes. A breadmaker sprouted legs and charged. The great toast-off descended into chaos. Competitors screamed as their own machines turned against them. A man was chased by a vengeful waffle iron. Another tried to bribe a blender with jam, only to be pureed himself, metaphorically. Parsnip grabbed the toaster, desperate. "Professor, how do I stop this?" Crumblewood adjusted his spectacles. "Oh, that's easy, you can't. Once the toaster chooses its master, it demands sacrifice." "Sacrifice? Yes, usually a small goat or at least a gluten-free muffin." Parsnip paled. "I don't have a goat." Admiral Fluffington hissed, clearly volunteering someone else. The Toastmaster's choice. Parsnip thought quickly. He pulled out his emergency supply of ginger biscuits and hurled them into the toaster. The machine hissed, confused. Biscuits were not on its diet. "Listen here," Parsnip shouted, surprising himself with sudden bravery. "I am not your Toastmaster. I am not your prophet of crumbs. I am a man who likes his breakfast simple, quiet, and preferably without infernal consequences." The hall fell silent. The appliances hesitated. Even the Toastron flickered uncertainly. "You want a master," Parsnip continued. "Fine, serve Admiral Fluffington." The cat leapt onto the toaster, tail flicking majestically. The Toastron beeped in submission. The appliances bowed. The council gasped. Professor Crumblewit clapped his hands in delight. And just like that, the rebellion ended. The machines powered down. Peace and toast returned to the hall. Epilogue. Breakfast at last. Several days later, back in his modest kitchen, Mr. Archibald Parsnip finally enjoyed a quiet breakfast. 2 slices, golden brown, buttered just so. The Toastron 5000 now sat in the corner, purring gently as Admiral Fluffington's personal throne. Parsnip sipped his tea. For the first time in weeks, everything felt normal. The doorbell rang. A parcel waited on the step. He opened it to find a brand new appliance. A blender labeled Smoothie Maker 3000, warning may attract vampires. Parsnip groaned. "Not again." Admiral Fluffington licked his paw, entirely unfazed. After all, cats have always been comfortable ruling over both humans and cursed kitchen equipment. And so it was that Mr. Archibald Parsnip, reluctant hero of toast, finally accepted his fate. Breakfast would never be simple again, but at least for now the toast was perfect. Part 3, The Smoothie of Doom, a peaceful morning too peaceful. For precisely 3 mornings after the toast-off, Mr. Archibald Parsnip enjoyed something approaching peace. The Toastron 5000, now loyal to Admiral Fluffington, behaved with unexpected dignity. It produced golden brown slices on command, purred occasionally, and refrained from summoning any more culinary imps. Parsnip began to hope foolishly that life had returned to normal. He resumed reading Practical Accountancy monthly, counted the cracks in his ceiling, still 17, one shaped suspiciously like Winston Churchill, and even attempted yoga, though he gave up after realizing his spine did not bend that way anymore. But peace is a suspicious thing. It lulls you into comfort, only to ambush you with calamity. And calamity arrived on the 4th morning, in the form of a blender. The blender arrives. The parcel had been sitting innocently by his door. Plain cardboard, no ominous glowing runes, no cackling voices, just a neat label, Smoothie Maker 3000 warning, may attract vampires, batteries not included. Parsnip should have thrown it away. He should have buried it under cement, or donated it to Mrs. Tittlewhip's gardening club. They had once accidentally weaponized a watering can, so they were prepared for cursed hardware. But he didn't. Because deep down, beneath his layers of sensible caution, Parsnip was curious. "Perhaps," he muttered, "it's just a blender. Perhaps it only blends." Admiral Fluffington watched with narrowed eyes as if to say, "You said that about the toaster, fool." Parsnip plugged it in. The blender hummed. Its chrome jug gleamed invitingly. He placed in a banana, some milk, and a spoonful of honey. He pressed the button. The blender roared like a lion gargling marbles. Sparks flew. The lights flickered. When it stopped, the smoothie inside was dark red. "That's odd," Parsnip said, peering in. "I didn't add strawberries." A voice echoed from the blender. "Drink me?" Parsnip dropped the glass. Admiral Fluffington hissed and swiped at the jug, which snapped back like a startled turtle. The smoothie hissed, producing a faint smell of garlic. Parsnip paled. Oh dear, vampires. The midnight visitor that night, as Parsnip tried to sleep, there was a tap at the window. Then another. then the unmistakable sound of someone saying, blah, dramatically. He pulled back the curtain to reveal a figure in a cape, hovering 2 feet off the ground. Pale skin, slicked back hair, teeth like piano keys. Good evening, the figure intoned. I am Count Chocula. No, wait, sorry, trademark dispute. I am Count von Sanguini, Lord of the Night, and I have come for your blender. My blender, Parsnip stammered. Yes, it calls to us, whispering through the grapevines, through the night, through the very smell of bananas. It is the chosen chalice for our smoothies of darkness. Parsnip glanced at Admiral Fluffington. The cat rolled his eyes. This was Tuesday-level nonsense. I'm afraid, Parsnip said, trying to be firm, that you cannot have my blender. I use it for breakfast. Von Sanguini hissed, cape flaring like an angry curtain. Then we duel. At dawn, isn't dawn inconvenient for you? The vampire paused, embarrassed. All right at midnight, better, not really. But it was settled. The duel of the smoothie midnight arrived. In the garden, under the suspicious gaze of Mrs. Tiddlewhip, who had her binoculars out, Parsnip stood trembling, holding the smoothie maker 3000. Opposite him, Count von Sanguini twirled his cape and produced a rival blender shaped like a coffin. The rules are simple. The Count declared, we each prepare a smoothie. The judges, he gestured, and 3 bats landed on a branch, squeaking officiously, will decide which is superior. Winner keeps the blender. Loser becomes slightly anemic. Parsnip gulped. He was not ready for this. His smoothie experience was limited to one unfortunate incident with kale. Still, he poured in bananas, milk, and honey again. The blender purred, then whispered, add garlic. What? That's absurd. Do it, mortal, trust me. Meanwhile, von Sanguini was throwing in blood oranges, raspberries, beetroot, and something that looked suspiciously like bottled plasma. His blender roared triumphantly. The 2 machines finished at the same moment. The bats fluttered down, sipping first from von Sanguini's concoction. They squeaked appreciatively, though one fainted dramatically into the flower bed. Then they tasted Parsnip's. Their tiny eyes widened. They squeaked wildly, wings flapping. One bat actually dabbed in midair. The verdict was unanimous. Parsnip's garlic banana smoothie was victorious. Von Sanguini wailed. Impossible. Garlic is our one weakness. Exactly, Parsnip said, surprised by his own cleverness. Breakfast always wins. The vampire vanished in a puff of smoke, swearing vengeance and possibly hinting at a sequel. Trouble brews in town. Word of Parsnip's victory spread quickly. Soon the townsfolk whispered that he was not merely a man, but a culinary warrior. People brought him broken kettles to bless, cursed toasters to tame, and once, a microwave that insisted on speaking Latin. Parsnip protested, I am not a hero, I am an accountant, I balance books, not blenders. But destiny did not listen. One afternoon, the mayor of Upper Grumblethorpe appeared at his door. Mr. Parsnip, we need you. The annual village fair is tomorrow, and the cotton candy machine has gone rogue. Parsnip sighed. Of course it has. The cotton candy catastrophe, the fairground was chaos. Pink clouds of spun sugar floated like balloons, sticking to hats, dogs, and an unfortunate brass band. The machine at the center spun furiously, shooting strands of candy like spiderwebs. Children cheered. Adults panicked. Parsnip approached cautiously. Admiral Fluffington marched ahead, tail high, looking ready to declare martial law. He unplugged the machine. It laughed. He poured water on it. It hissed and spun faster. Finally, he dragged over the toaster on 5000. The toaster glowed, hummed, and launched 2 slices of burning toast straight into the machine's maw. There was a hiss, a spark, and then silence. The candy collapsed. The machine was defeated. The crowd